All right, let's dive in. Today we're tackling Jean Lafitte. I got that excerpt you sent from Jean Lafitte. Pirate, patriot, and smuggler of the Gulf. And man, this guy's life. Talk about a roller coaster. Pirate, privateer, smuggler, maybe even a patriot. How does one person even manage that?
It really makes you think about those simple good guy, bad guy categories we try to put history in, doesn't it? And even figuring out basic facts about Lafitte is tricky. Like, where was he even born? Some say Biarritz, France. Others Saint-Domingue, which is Haiti now. It's like he wanted to be a mystery from the start.
Yeah, creating that legend early on. But we know he ends up in New Orleans with his brother Pierre, early 1800s, running a warehouse, sure, but come on, smuggling was the real game. And not just some small-time stuff either. They were organized, bought a whole schooner, hired a captain just for piracy. That's serious business.
And you got to consider what was going on around them. The Napoleonic War is raging. U.S. slaps on the Embargo Act of 1807, trying to mess with trade with Britain and France. But that actually helped the Laffittes, pushed them to Barataria Bay, and boom, smuggling empire time.
So, a government trying to stop trade accidentally helps create a pirate haven. The irony. But here's the thing that gets me. They were ruthless about cargo, but some stories say they treated captured crews decently, even gave back ships sometimes. Calculated move to avoid blowback, or did they actually have some weird pirate code of fairness going on?
Tough to say, right?
Yeah.
It's what makes Lafitte so interesting. Returning ships, smart move business-wise, keeps things calmer. Maybe folks cooperate next time. But yeah, that whole pirate honor thing, it's there too. Hard to know what was truly driving them, but adds another layer to the story for sure.
Absolutely. And then things get really crazy. War of 1812 breaks out. Lafitte's stuck between the U.S. and Great Britain, both wanting Barataria Bay and his Gulf Coast know-how. Talk about pressure.
And the British, they see this guy who's already on shaky ground with the U.S. government, think they can use that, offer him citizenship, land, tons of money to help them against the Americans. Huge risk for them, but for Lafitte,
Yeah.
life-changing maybe.
And remember, this is just weeks after the U.S. Navy raided Barataria, took a big chunk of his fleet. But what does Lafitte do? He tells the Americans about the British offer. That's some bold move right there.
Total power play. Lafitte knew siding with the British was risky. They were a foreign power. If they lost, he's done for. Telling the Americans it's like an insurance policy, trying to win no matter who comes out on top.
Always thinking ahead. And it worked. General Andrew Jackson needs help defending New Orleans. Lafitte steps up, offers men, guns, his knowledge of the waterways. Genius.
This is where his strategic thinking shines. Lafitte and his men, lots of them, expert gunners, sailors, they were vital in the American victory at the Battle of New Orleans. They knew the area, knew how to fight, helped beat back a much bigger British force. Even Jackson admitted it, called them hellfire, but acknowledged their bravery too.
Incredible. Declared a pirate, gets raided by the Navy, then boom, hero, pardoned. What a story. But was it patriotism that made him side with the Americans, or just another smart move to survive and thrive?
The big question, isn't it? And like a lot of Lafitte's life, history doesn't give a clear answer. Some say he saw a chance for a new life in the U.S. It was just starting out then. Others say he just picked the winning side. Probably a mix of both, to be honest. What's clear is Lafitte landed on his feet yet again.
And that's not even the end of it. After the war, Lafitte's story takes us to...
Hold on. Before we jump ahead, gotta mention something else about his time in Barataria Bay, something pretty important.
Okay, what's this Barataria Bay detail? I'm intrigued.
Well, all that smuggling, privateering, Lafitte was up to his neck in the slave trade too. Remember, importing slaves was illegal in the U.S. then, but the demand, huge, especially in a booming port like New Orleans. Lafitte saw the opportunity, used his ships, his network to smuggle them right into Louisiana.
That's not something you hear about often. Makes you think even someone breaking the law can still be part of something truly awful. Adds a whole other dimension to who Lafitte was.
No doubt. And it shows how messed up things were back then. A society built on slavery. For someone like Lafitte, always working in the shadows, chasing profit, maybe the ethics of it all weren't his top concern.
It's a reminder that history isn't simple, no clear heroes and villains all the time. People are complicated, and their ambition, the opportunities they see, sometimes it comes at a terrible cost to others.
Exactly. But Lafitte's story keeps going, even after the War of 1812. Pardon in hand, reputation for being cunning, bold. He sets his sights on something new, the Mexican War of Independence.
From pirate to patriot to revolutionary, what was he after this time? Believed in the cause, or just another smart move in a changing world?
Probably both, to be honest. Lafitte always had an eye for making a profit, and the Mexican War of Independence that was full of opportunities. He becomes a spy for the Spanish, using what he knew about the Gulf Coast, his connections in New Orleans, to gather intel on the rebels.
So even with the U.S. pardon, he's still playing both sides. Seems like that double dealing was just in his nature.
You got it. And then, in 1817, he sets up shop on Galveston Island, right off the coast of Texas, calls it Campeche, and turns it into this bustling smuggling center.
Wait, hold on. He made his own little pirate kingdom. That's pretty gutsy, even for Lafitte.
Bold move, definitely.
Yeah.
Shows how ambitious he was, how he understood power. With Campeche, he was outside any government's control, running things his way, profits flowing.
I remember reading about problems they had, though. Attacks from the Carancala people, a hurricane. Doesn't sound like a paradise.
You're right. As clever as he was, Lafitte couldn't control everything. The Carancala, the indigenous people there, they saw him and his men as invaders, attacked Campeche often. And in 1818, bam, huge hurricane hits, wrecks the place, ships destroyed, buildings gone.
Even a pirate king can't escape the Gulf Coast weather. But didn't the colony bounce back? It didn't just disappear, right?
Oh, it did, for a while. At its peak, Campeche had over 2,000 people living there. Lafitte's reputation, the promise of getting rich, it drew people to that lawless outpost. But there's that dark side again. He kept exploiting those gaps in American law to profit from the slave trade, bringing enslaved Africans to Campeche, selling them.
It's tough to hear, but important. Even in a place that seems all about freedom and getting ahead, slavery was still there. That Lafitte kept profiting from it, it said a lot about him, doesn't it?
A tough subject, and historians still debate it. Was he just a man of his time, where slavery was accepted? Or did he just not care about the human cost? Hard to judge him by today's standards, but gotta acknowledge this part of his story.
Definitely. And it seems like that catches up with him eventually. What happens next?
Well, Campeche is growing, getting more influential, and the U.S. government starts paying attention. 1821, one of Lafitte's captains attacks an American merchant ship. Big diplomatic mess. The U.S. demands he leaves Campeche, stops everything he's doing.
Years building his own empire, defying everyone, and now Lafitte has to face the music. What do you do?
He pushed back, at first. Refused to leave Campeche, thought he could stand up to the U.S. But the Navy was serious, sent warships to Galveston Island. Lafitte, facing that kind of force. He makes a wild choice.
He wasn't going to go down quietly, was he?
He fought, but in a way you wouldn't expect. Instead of battling the Navy head-on, he tells his men to burn Campeche.
The whole place.
Burn his own city. Why on earth would he do that?
It was defiance, but smart too. Destroying Campeche meant the U.S. Navy couldn't capture it. No victory for them. Plus, all the evidence of his smuggling, everything gone. Harder to prosecute him.
Kind of poetic. Built this empire, wouldn't let anyone else have it. But what about Lafitte himself? Where'd he go after Campeche burned?
That's where things get hazy. Some say he escaped with a fortune, all that treasure he'd gathered over the years. Others say he lost it all in the fire. What we know for sure is he left Galveston Island and vanished from history.
After all that, the Pirate King just disappears, leaves behind this legacy of adventure, intrigue, and so many unanswered questions. Almost too perfect an ending for a man who lived in the shadows. But the story doesn't quite end there. Even after he was gone, Lafitte's legend kept growing. Stories about his exploits, hidden treasures, that larger-than-life personality, they spread all over the Gulf Coast, even farther.
There's one story sounds totally crazy. Gotta ask you about it. Okay, you gotta tell me. What's this crazy Lafitte story I keep hearing about?
You're talking about the one where he rescues Napoleon from exile on St. Helena.
That's it. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but part of me kind of wants it to be true. A pirate rescuing an emperor? Come on, that's epic.
It's a great story, no doubt. Shows how powerful Lafitte's legend became. But truth is, there's no proof at all that it happened. Probably just a tall tale, you know. People romanticize figures like Lafitte, love a good mystery, and a daring rescue. Two big names like that. It's just too good to resist.
No pirate emperor team up then. Too bad. But even without Napoleon, Lafitte's life is wild enough. Looking back on it all, what do you think is the most interesting part of his legacy?
For me, it's how Lafitte makes us rethink the way we see history, the people in it. He wasn't just a good guy or a bad guy, not simple like that. He lived in those gray areas, driven by ambition, yeah, but also just seeing where things were going and knowing how to use that.
That makes sense. He was a master at playing the game. A sharp businessman, a bold leader. Could be ruthless, no question. His role in the slave trade, that shows that. But then there are those times he acted with almost like honor, you know?
Yeah.
treating captured crews well, that kind of thing.
And don't forget how he helped the Americans win at the Battle of New Orleans. Whatever his reasons were, his knowledge of the Gulf, his fighting skills, they were crucial. Shows that history is full of surprises. Even those on the fringes can change things in big ways.
It's like one person's villain is another's hero, right? Lafitte was a man of his time. Things were changing so fast in the Americas, colonial powers, new nations, the economy shifting. He knew how to use all of it, sometimes for good, sometimes not.
And his story makes us dig deeper, not settle for easy answers. Makes us ask those tough questions, look at the messy parts of history, see that even the clearest stories have layers, contradictions.
That's something to remember from any deep dive, but this one especially. Jean Lafitte, always on the edge, pushing limits, defying what people expected. Pirate, privateer, smuggler, patriot, slave trader, maybe even a revolutionary in his own way. He was all those things and none of them at the same time. A real puzzle that historians are still trying to figure out.
And that's what makes it so fascinating. His story doesn't fit neatly into a box. Makes us look at the messiness of the past, how ambition, circumstances, even luck can come together to create outcomes no one could have predicted.
So, next time you see Jean Lafitte's name, whether it's in a history book, a novel, or even just a bar named after him, remember it's not just a name, it's a challenge. To explore the past, question what you think you know, and appreciate the power of a life lived on the edge.
Well said. I think we've charted the rough seas of Jean Lafitte's life pretty well. Until next time, may your own deep dives be full of intrigue, new discoveries, and maybe even a little bit of that pirate treasure.